Hopefully the AC is not too loud, but you can probably hear it. My apologies. There's literally nothing else I can do. Oh, did I grab the wrong book? I opened that up and saw an appendix. That's not what you want to see. We want to see. Here we go. Chapter 7. So chapter 7 is The Mirror of Galadriel. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and the shadows were deepening in the woods when they went on again. Their paths now went into thickets where the dusk had already gathered. Night came beneath the trees as they walked, and the elves uncovered their silver lamps. Suddenly they came out into the open again, and found themselves under a pale evening sky pricked by a few early stars. There was a wide, treeless space before them, running in a great circle and bending away on either hand. Beyond it was a deep fosse lost in soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if it glowed still in the memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side there rose to a great height a green wall encircling a green hill thronged with malorn trees, taller than any they had yet seen in all the land. Their height could not be guessed, but they stood up in the twilight like living towers. In their many-tiered branches and amid their ever-moving leaves, countless lights were gleaming, green and gold and silver. Haldir turned towards the company. "Welcome to Calas Galadon," he said. Caras Galadon, my apologies, Caras Galadon, he said. "Here is the city of the Galadrim, where dwell the Lord Celeborn and Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien. But we cannot enter here, for the gates do not look northward. We must go round to the southern side, and the way is not short, for the city is great." There was a road paved with white stone running on the outer brink of the fosse. Along this they went westward, with the city ever climbing up like a green cloud upon their left, and as the night deepened, more lights sprang forth, until all the hills seemed afire with stars. They came at last to a white bridge, and crossing found the great gates of the city. They faced southwest, set between the ends of the encircling wall that here overlapped, and they were tall and strong, and hung with many lamps. Haldir knocked and spoke, and the gates opened soundlessly, but of guards Frodo could see no sign. The travelers passed within, and the gates shut behind them. They were in a deep lane between the ends of the wall, and passing quickly through it, they entered the city of the trees. No folk could they see, nor hear any feet upon the paths, but there were many voices about them, and in the air above. Far away, up on the hill, they could hear the sound of singing falling from the high, like soft rain upon leaves. They went along many paths and climbed many stairs, until they came to the high places, and saw before them, amid a wide lawn, a fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees, and it fell into a basin of silver, from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth bole gleamed like gray silk, and up it towered until its first branches, far above, opened their huge limbs under shadowy clouds of leaves. Beside it a broad white ladder stood, and at its foot 3 elves were seated. They sprang up as the travelers approached, and Frodo saw that they were tall and clad in gray mail, and from their shoulders hung long white cloaks. "Here dwell Celeborn and Galadriel," said Haldir. "It is their wish that she should ascend and speak with them." One of the elf wardens then blew a clear note on a small horn, and it was answered 3 times from far above. "I will go first," said Haldir. "Let Frodo come next, and with him Legolas. The others may follow as they wish. It is a long climb for those that are not accustomed to such stairs, but you may rest upon the way." As he climbed slowly up, Frodo passed many flets, some on one side, some on another, and some set about the bole of the tree, so that the latter passed through them. At a great height above the ground he came to a wide talon, like the deck of a great ship. On it was built a house so large that almost it would have served for a hall of men upon the earth. He entered behind Haldir, and found that he was in a chamber of oval shape, in the midst of which grew the trunk of the great Malorn, now tapering towards its crown, and yet making still a pillar of wide girth. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. Many elves were seated there. On 2 chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bough, there sat, side by side, Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet their guests, after the manner of elves, even those who were accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the lord, and they were grave and beautiful. They were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of Lord Celeborn was of silver, long and bright. But no sign of age was upon them, unless it were in the depths of their eyes, for these were keen as lances in the starlight, and yet profound, the wells of deep memory. Haldir led Frodo before them, and the Lord welcomed him in his own tongue. The lady Galadriel said no word, but looked long upon his face. "Sit now beside my chair, Frodo of the Shire," said Celeborn. "When all have come, we will speak together." Each of the companions he greeted courteously by name as they entered. "Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn," he said. "It is 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land, and those years lie heavy on you. But the end is near, for good or ill. Here, lay aside your burden for a while. Welcome, son of Thranduil. Too seldom do my kindred journey hither from the north. Welcome, Gimli, son of Glóin. It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folk in Caras Galadon, but today we have broken our long law. May it be a sign that though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship shall be renewed between our peoples." Gimli bowed low. When all the guests were seated before his chair, the Lord looked at them again. "Here there are 8, he said. 9 were set out, so said the messages, but maybe there has been some change of counsel that we have not heard. Elrond is far away." Whoop. Shush. Why did you do that? "Elrond is far away, and darkness gathers between us, and all this year the shadows have grown longer." "Nay, there was no change of counsel," said the Lady Galadriel, speaking for the first time. Her voice was clear and musical, but deeper than woman's wont. "Gandalf the Grey set out with the company, but he did not pass the borders of this land. Now tell us where he is, for I much desire to speak with him again, but I cannot see him from afar, unless he comes within the fences of Lothlorien. A grey mist is about him, and the ways of his feet and of his mind are hidden from me." "Alas," said Aragorn, "Gandalf the Grey fell into shadow. He remained in Moria and did not escape." At these words, all the elves in the hall cried aloud in grief and amazement. "These are evil tidings," said Celeborn, "the most evil that have been spoken here in long years full of grievous deeds." He turned to Haldir. "Why has nothing of this been told to me before?" he asked in the elven tongue. "We have not spoken to Haldir of our deeds or our purpose," said Legolas. "At first we were wary and danger was too close behind, and afterwards we almost forgot our grief for a time, as we walked in gladness in the fair paths of Lorien. Yet our grief is great, and our loss cannot be mended," said Frodo. "Gandalf was our guide, and he led us through Moria, and where our escape seemed beyond hope, he saved us, and he fell." "Tell us now the full tale," said Celeborn. Then Aragorn recounted all that had happened upon the pass of Caradhras, and in the days that followed, and he spoke of Balin in his book, and the fight in the chamber of Mazarbul, and the fire, and the narrow bridge, and the coming of the terror. An evil of the ancient world, it seemed, such as I have never seen before, said Aragorn. It was both a shadow and a flame, strong and terrible. It was a Balrog of Morgoth, said Legolas. Of all elfbanes the most deadly, save the one who sits in the Dark Tower. There's so many interesting words happening. Genre-ly, I suppose? Yeah, we'll go with that. Indeed, I saw upon the bridge that which haunts our darkest dreams. I saw Durin's bane, said Gimli in a low voice, and dread was in his eyes. Alas, said Celeborn, we long have feared that under Caradhras a terror slept. But had I known that dwarves had stirred up this evil in Moria again, I would have forbidden you past the northern borders, you and all that went with you. And if it were possible, one would say that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria. He would be rash indeed that said that thing, said Galadriel gravely. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind, and cannot report his full purpose. But however it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlorien, who of the Galadrim, even Celeborn the Wise, would pass nigh, and would not wish to look upon their ancient home, though it had become an abode of dragons. Dark is the water of Helidzarum, and cold are the springs of Kibil Nala, and fair were the many-pillared halls of Khazad-dûm in elder days, before the fall of mighty kings beneath the stone. She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes, and it seemed to him that he looked into the heart of an enemy and saw there love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and he then smiled in answer. And I got chills. That was good. He rose clumsily and bowed in dwarf fashion, saying, Yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. It's high praise from a dwarf. There was a silence. At length Celeborn spoke again. I did not know that your plight was so evil, he said. Let Gimli forget my harsh words. I spoke in the trouble of my heart. I will do what I can to aid you, each according to his wish and need, but especially that one of the little folk who bears the burden. Your quest is known to us, said Galadriel, looking at Frodo, but we will not here speak of it more openly. Yet not in vain will it prove, maybe, that you came to this land seeking aid, as Gandalf himself plainly purposed. For the Lord of the Galadrim is accounted to the wisest of the elves of Middle-earth, and a giver of gifts beyond the power of kings. He has dwelt in the west since the days of dawn, and I have dwelt with him years uncounted, for ere the fall of Nargothrond or Gondolin I passed over the mountains, and together through ages of the world we have fought the long defeat. I it was who first summoned the White Council, and if my designs had not gone amiss, it would have been governed by Gandalf the Grey, and then mayhap things would have gone otherwise. But even now there is hope left. I will not give you counsel, saying do this or do that, for not in doing or contriving, nor in choosing between this course and another, can I avail, but only in knowing what was and is, and in part what also shall be. But this I will say to you, your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fall to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains while all the company is true. And with that word she held them with her eyes, and in silence looked searchingly at each of them in turn. None save Legolas and Aragorn could long endure her glance. Sam quickly blushed and hung his head. At length the Lady Galadriel released them from her eyes, and she smiled. Do not let your hearts be troubled, she said. Tonight you shall sleep in peace." Then they sighed, and felt suddenly weary, as those who have been questioned long and deeply, though no words have been spoken openly. "Go now," said Celeborn. "You were worn with sorrow and much toil. Even if your quest did not concern us closely, you should have refuge in this city until you were healed and refreshed. Now you will rest, and we will not speak of your further road for a while." That night, the company slept upon the ground, much to the satisfaction of the hobbits. The elves spread for them a pavilion among the trees near the fountain, and in it they laid soft couches. Then, speaking words of peace with fair elvish voices, they left them. For a little while the travelers talked of their night before in the treetops, and of their day's journey, and of the lord and lady, for they had not yet the heart to look further back. "What did you blush for, Sam?" said Pippin. "You soon broke down. Anyone would have thought you had a guilty conscience. I hope it was nothing worse than a wicked plot to steal one of my blankets." "I never thought no such thing," answered Sam, in no mood for jest. "If you want to know, I felt as if I hadn't got nothing on, and I didn't like it. She seemed to be looking inside me and asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire, to a nice little hole with a bit of a garden of my own." "That's funny," said Mary. "Almost exactly what I felt myself, only, well, I don't think I'll say any more," he ended lamely. All of them, it seemed, had fared alike. Each had felt that he was offered a choice between a shadow full of fear that lay ahead and something that he greatly desired. Clear before his mind it lay, and to get it he only had to turn aside from the road and leave the quest and the war against Sauron to others. It's an interesting form of temptation. "It seemed to me, too," said Gimli, "that my choice would remain secret and known only to myself." "To me it seemed exceedingly strange," said Boromir. "Maybe it was only a test, and she thought to read over our thoughts for her own good purpose. But almost I should have said that she was tempting us, and offering what she pretended to have the power to give. It need not be said that I refused to listen. The men of Minas Tirith are true to their word." But what he thought that the lady had offered him, Boromir did not tell. And as for Frodo, he would not speak, though Boromir pressed him with questions. "She held you long in her gaze, Ring-bearer," he said. "Yes," said Frodo. "But whatever came into my mind then, I will keep there." "Well, have a care," said Boromir. "I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes." "Speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel," said Aragorn sternly. "You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man bring it hither himself. Then let him beware. But tonight I shall sleep without fear for the first time since I left Rivendell. And may I sleep deep and forget for a while my grief. I am weary in body and heart." He cast himself down upon his couch and fell at once into a long sleep. The others soon did the same. With no sound or dream disturbed their slumber. When they woke, they found that the light of day was broad upon the lawn before the pavilion, and the fountain rose and fell glittering in the sun. They remained some days in Lothlorien, so far as they could tell or remember. All the while that they dwelt there, the sun shone clear, save for a gentle rain that fell at times, and passed away, leaving all things fresh and clean. The air was cool and soft, as if it were early spring, yet they felt about them the deep and thoughtful quiet of winter. It seemed to them that they did little but eat and drink and rest, and walk among the trees, and it was enough. They had not seen the lord and lady again, and they had little speech with any of the elven folk, for few of these spoke any but their own sylvan tongue. Haldir had bidden them farewell, and gone back again to the fences of the north, where great watch was now kept since the tidings of Moria that the company had brought. Legolas was away much among the Galadrim, and after the first night he did not sleep with the other companions, though he returned to eat and talk with them. Often he took Gimli with him when he went abroad in the land, and the others wondered at this change. Now, as the companions sat or walked together, they spoke of Gandalf, and all that each had known and seen of him came clear before their minds. It's the last day of the state fair. As they were healed of hurt and weariness of body, the grief of their loss grew more keen. My windows are not even open, by the way. It's just like that. Often they heard nearby elvish voices singing, and knew that they were making songs of lamentation for his fall, for they caught his name among the sweet, sad words that they could not understand. Mithrandir, sang the elves, O pilgrim grey, for so they loved to call him. But if Legolas was with the company, he would not interpret the songs for them, saying that he had not the skill, and that for him the grief was still too near, a matter for tears and not yet for song. It was Frodo who first put something of his sorrow into halting words. Yes, they're going to make me sing here in a bit. He was seldom moved to make song or rhyme. Even in Rivendell he had listened, and had not sung himself, though his memory was stored with many things that others had made before him. But now as he sat beside the fountain in Lorien, and heard about him the voices of the elves, his thought took shape in a song that seemed fair to him, yet when he tried to repeat it to Sam, only snatches remained, faded as a handful of withered leaves. When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away on journey long without a word. From Wilderland to western shore, from northern waste to southern hill, through dragon lair and hidden door and darkling woods he walked at will. With dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bough and beast in den, in their own secret tongues he spoke. I think I lost a page. There we go. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh, an old man in a battered hat who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone, in Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. Why, you'll be beating Mr. Frodo next, you'll be beating Mr. Bilbo next, said Sam. No, I'm afraid not, said, what? Huh? What? I'm afraid not, said Bilbo. Huh? Can I read? Why, you'll be beating Mr. Bilbo next, said Sam. No, I'm afraid not. Close what's passing for quotation marks in this book, said Bilbo. More quotation marks, but that is the best that I can do yet. Huh. I think that's a typo. I think that's a typo that my brain switched back earlier. Yeah. Why, you'll be beating Mr. Bilbo next, said Sam. No, I'm afraid not, said... It's written Bilbo, but I think it's supposed to be Frodo. But that is the best I can do yet. Well, Mr. Frodo, if you have another go, I hope you'll say a word about his fireworks, said Sam. Something like this. The finest rockets ever seen. They burst in stars of blue and green. or after thunder golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. Though that doesn't do them justice by a long road. No, I'll leave that to you, Sam, or perhaps to Bilbo, but, well, I can't talk of it any more. I can't bear to think of bringing the news to him. One evening, Frodo and Sam were walking together in the cool twilight. Both of them felt restless again. On Frodo suddenly the shadow of parting had fallen. He knew somehow that the time was very near when he must leave Lothlorien. "What do you think of the elves now, Sam?" he said. "I asked you the same question once before. It seems a very long while ago, but you have seen more of them since then." "I have indeed," said Sam. "I reckon there's elves and elves. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now these folk aren't wanderers or homeless, and seem a bit nearer to the likes of us. They seem to belong here, even more than hobbits do in the Shire. Whether they've made the land or the land's made them, it's hard to say if you take my meaning. It's wonderfully quiet here. Nothing seems to be going on, and nobody seems to want it to. If there's any magic about, it's right down deep, where I can't lay my hands on it, in a manner of speaking." "You can see and feel it everywhere," said Frodo. "Well," said Sam, "you can't see nobody working it. No fireworks like poor old Gandalf used to show. I wonder we don't see nothing of the Lord and Lady in all these days. I fancy now that she could do some wonderful things, if she had a mind. I'd dearly love to see some elf magic, Mr. Frodo." "I wouldn't," said Frodo. "I am content. And I don't miss Gandalf's fireworks, but his bushy eyebrows, and his quick temper, and his voice." "You're right," said Sam. "And don't think I'm finding fault. I've often wanted to see a bit of magic, like what it tells of in old tales, but I've never heard of a better land than this. It's like being at home and on a holiday at the same time, if you understand me. I don't want to leave. All the same, I'm beginning to feel that if we've got to go on, we'd best get it over. It's the job that's never started, as takes the longest to finish, as my old gaffer used to say. And I don't reckon that these folk can do much more to help us, magic or no. It's when we leave this land that we shall miss Gandalf worse, I'm thinking." "I'm afraid that's only too true, Sam," said Frodo. "Yet I hope very much that before we leave we shall see the Lady of the Elves again." Even as he spoke, they saw, as if she came in answer to their words, the Lady Galadriel approaching. Tall and white and fair, she walked beneath the trees. She spoke no word, but beckoned to them. Turning aside, she led them toward the southern slopes of the hill of Carest Galadon, and passing through a high green hedge, they came into an enclosed garden. No trees grew here, and it lay open to the sky. The evening star had risen, and was shining with white fire above the western woods. Down a long flight of steps the lady went into a deep green hollow, through which ran murmuring the silver stream that issued from the fountain on the hill. At the bottom, upon a low pedestal, carved like a branching tree, stood a basin of silver, wide and shallow, and beside it stood a silver ewer. Sorry, one moment while I check my things. Okay, everything looks good. With water from the stream, Galadriel filled the basin to the brim and breathed on it. And when the water was still again, she spoke. "Here is the mirror of Galadriel," she said. "I have brought you here so that you may look in it, if you will." The air was very still, and the dell was dark, and the elf lady beside him was tall and pale. "What shall we look for, and what shall we see?" asked Frodo, filled with awe. "Many things I can command the mirror to reveal," she answered, "and to some I can show what they desire to see. But the mirror will also show things unbidden, and those are often stranger and more profitable than things in which we wish to behold. What you will see, if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell. for it shows things that were, and things that are, and things that yet may be, but which it is that he sees. Even the wisest cannot always tell. Do you wish to look?" Frodo did not answer. "And you?" she said, turning to Sam. "For this is what your folk would call magic, I believe, though I do not understand clearly what they mean, and they may seem also to use the same word for the deceits of the enemy. But this, if you will, is the magic of Galadriel. Did you not say that you wished to see elf magic?" "I did," said Sam, trembling a little between fear and curiosity. "I'll have a peep, lady, if you're willing." "And I'd not mind a glimpse of what's going on at home," he said in an aside to Frodo, "but it seems a terrible long time that I've been away. But there, like as not, I'll only see the stars, or something that I wouldn't understand." "Like as not," said the lady with a gentle laugh. "But come, you shall look and see what you may. Do not touch the water." Sam climbed up to the foot of the pedestal and leaned over the basin. The water looked hard and dark. Stars were reflected in it. "There's only stars, as I thought," he said. Then he gave a low gasp, for the stars went out. As if a dark veil had been withdrawn, the mirror grew gray and then clear. There was sun shining, and the branches of the trees were waving and tossing in the wind. But before Sam could make up his mind what it was that he saw, the light faded. And now he thought he saw Frodo, with a pale face, lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Then he seemed to see himself, going along a dim passage and climbing an endless, winding stair. It came to him suddenly that he was looking urgently for something, but what it was he did not know. Like a dream, the vision shifted and went back, and he saw the trees again. But this time they were not so close, and he could see what was going on. They were not waving in the wind. They were falling, crashing to the ground. "Hi!" cried Sam in an outraged voice. "There's that Ted Sandyman a-cutting down trees as he shouldn't. They oughtn't to be felled. They did not to be felled. It's that avenue beyond the mill that shades the road to Bywater. I wish I could get at Ted and fell him." But now Sam noticed that the old mill had vanished, and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. Lots of folk were busily at work. There was a tall red chimney nearby. Black smoke seemed to cloud the surface of the mirror. "There's some devilry at work in the Shire," he said. "Elrond knew what he was about when he wanted to send Mr. Merry back." Then suddenly Sam gave a cry and sprang away. "I can't stay here," he said wildly. "I must go home. They've dug up Bagshot Row, and there's the poor old gaffer going down the hill with his bits and things on a barrow. I must go home." "You cannot go home alone," said the lady. "You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked into the mirror. And yet you knew that evil things might well be happening in the Shire. Remember that the mirror shows many things, and not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be, unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds." Oh, if that ain't relevant to now. Sam sat on the ground and put his head in his hands. "I wish I had never come here. I don't want to see more magic," he said, and fell silent. After a moment, he spoke again thickly, as if struggling with tears. "No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all," he said. "But I hope I do get back some day. If what I've seen turns out true, somebody's going to catch it hot." Oh, Sam. I love Sam. Oh. "Do you now wish to look, Frodo?" said the Lady Galadriel. "You did not wish to see elf magic, and were content." "Do you advise me to look?" asked Frodo. "No," she said. "I do not counsel you one way or the other. I am not a counselor. You may learn something, and whether what you see be fair or evil, that may be profitable, and yet it may not. Seeing is both good and perilous, yet I think, Frodo, that you have courage and wisdom enough for the venture, or I would not have brought you here. Do as you will. I'm sorry, I gotta pause and yak a bit here, because I'm just really interested in how blatantly Tolkien is characterizing his two great elf characters, Elrond and Galadriel, because Elrond is definitely a counselor. I almost wonder if there's like just the slightest bit of, maybe not shade, but maybe like chiding in Galadriel's words. Probably not, but it would work. Oh no, I think I've lost my place. Nope, here we are. I will look, said Frodo. And he climbed on the pedestal and bent over the dark water. At once the mirror cleared, and he saw a twilit land. Mountains loomed dark in the distance against a pale sky. A long grey road wound back out of sight. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clearer as it approached. Suddenly Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost cried aloud the wizard's name, but then he saw that the figure was clothed not in grey, but in white. In a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in its hand there was a white staff. The head was so bowed that he could see no face, and presently the figure turned aside round a bend in the road, and went out of the mirror's view. Doubt came into Frodo's mind. Was this a vision of Gandalf on one of his many lonely journeys long ago, or was it Saruman? The vision now changed. Brief and small, but very vivid, he caught a glimpse of Bilbo, walking restlessly about his room. The table was littered with disordered papers. Rain was beating on the windows. Then there was a pause, and after many swift scenes followed that, Frodo in some way knew to be parts of a great history in which he had become involved. The mist cleared, and he saw a sight which he had never seen before, but knew at once: the sea. Darkness fell. The sea rose and raged in a great storm. And then he saw against the sun, sinking blood red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails, riding up out of the west, then a wide river flowing through a populous city, then a white fortress with 7 towers, then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again, and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. A smoke as of fire and battle arose, and again the sun went down in a burning red that faded into a grey mist, and into the mist a small ship passed away, twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. I have no idea what that mess was about. I know what the white tree is, and I'm pretty sure the 7 towers, and there are ships involved, but I don't actually know what that is. If you know what that is, comments. I would like to know. But suddenly, the mirror went altogether dark as if a hole had opened in the world of sight, and Frodo looked into emptiness. In the black abyss there appeared a single eye that slowly grew until it filled nearly all the mirror. So terrible was it that Frodo stood rooted, unable to cry out or to withdraw his gaze. The eye was rimmed with fire, but it was itself glazed, yellow as a cat's, watchful and intent, and the black slit of its pupil opened on a pit, a window into nothing. Then the eye began to rove, searching this way and that, and Frodo knew with certainty and horror that among the many things that it sought, he himself was one. But he also knew that it could not see him, not yet, not unless he willed it. The ring that hung upon its chain about his neck grew heavy, heavier than a great stone, and his head was dragged downwards. The mirror seemed to be growing hot, and curls of steam were rising from the water. He was slipping forward. "Do not touch the water," said Lady Galadriel softly. The vision faded, and Frodo found that he was looking at the cool stars twinkling in the silver basin. He stepped back, shaking all over and looking at the lady. "I know what it was that you last saw," she said, "for that is also in my mind. Do not be afraid, but do not think that only by singing amid the trees, nor even by the slender arrows of elven bows, is this land of Lothlorien maintained and defended against its enemy. I say to you, Frodo, that even as I speak to you, I perceive the Dark Lord and know his mind, or all of his mind that concerns the elves. And he gropes ever to see me in my thought, but still the door is closed." Okay. Page 472. I need to type that into my D&D chat because I didn't realize. I probably didn't grab that idea from this book because I read it a really long time ago. Dang. I read it in high school. Let's say that. But wow. Okay, page 472. She lifted up her white arms and spread out her hands towards the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Thank you, John, for that wonderful mental image. My heart was not prepared. My heart was not prepared. Eärendil, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring about her finger. It glittered like polished gold overlaid with silver light, and a white stone in it twinkled as if the elven star had come down to rest upon her hand. Frodo gazed at the ring with awe, for suddenly it seemed to him that he understood. "Yes," she said, divining his thought. "It is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond would not do so, but it cannot be hidden from the ring-bearer, and the one who has seen the eye. Verily it is in the land of Lorien, upon the finger of Galadriel, that one of the three remains. This is Nenya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper. He suspects, but he does not yet know. Not yet. Do you not see now, wherefore your coming is to us as the footstep of doom? For if you fail, then we are laid bare to the enemy. Yet if you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlorien will fade, and the tides of time will sweep it away. We must depart into the west, or dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten." Frodo bent his head. "And what do you wish?" he said at last. "That what should be, shall be," she answered. "The love of the elves for their land and their works is deeper than the depths of the sea, and their regret is undying and cannot ever wholly be assuaged. Yet they will cast all away rather than submit to Sauron, for they know him now. For the fate of Lothlorien you are not answerable, but only for the doing of your own task. Yet I could wish, were it of any avail, that the One Ring had never been wrought, or had remained forever lost." "You are wise and fearless and fair, Lady Galadriel," said Frodo. "I will give you the One Ring, if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me." Galadriel laughed with a sudden, clear laugh. "Wise the Lady Galadriel may be," she said, Yet here she has met her match in courtesy. Gently are you revenged for my testing of your heart at our first meeting. You begin to see with a keen eye. I do not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you offer. For many long years I had pondered what I might do, should the great ring come into my hands, and behold, it was brought within my grasp. The evil that was devised long ago works on in many ways, whether Sauron himself stands or falls. Would not that have been a noble deed, to set to the credit of his ring, if I had taken it by force or fear from my guest? And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore there issued a great light that illuminated her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measure, and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. I passed the test, she said. I will diminish, and go into the west, and remain Galadriel. I have chills again. Oh, the professor has no idea that he was toying with the emotions of a millennial in the 2020s. The chapter's not even done. It was just intense. Okay. They stood for a while in silence. At length the lady spoke again. Let us return, she said. In the morning you must depart. For now we have chosen, and the tides of fate are flowing. I would ask one thing before we go, said Frodo. A thing which I often meant to ask Gandalf in Rivendell. Am I permitted to wear the One Ring? Why cannot I see all the others and know the thoughts of those that wear them? You have not tried, she said. Only thrice have you set the ring upon your finger since you knew what you possessed. Do not try. It would destroy you. Did not Gandalf tell you that the rings give power according to the measure of each possessor? Before you could use that power, you would need to become far stronger, and to train your will to the domination of others. Yet even so, as ring-bearer, and as one that had borne it on its finger, and seen that which is hidden, your sight is grown keener. You have perceived my thought more clearly than many that are accounted wise. You saw the eye of him that holds the 7 and the 9. And did you not see and recognize the ring upon my finger? Did you see my ring? She asked again, turning to Sam. No, lady, he answered. To tell you the truth, I wondered what you were talking about. I saw a star through your finger, but, if you'll pardon my speaking out, I think my master was right. I wish you'd take his ring. You'd put things to rights. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer and turning him adrift. You'd make some folk pay for their dirty work. I would, she said. That is how it would begin, but it will not stop with that, alas. We will not speak more of it. Let us go. Okay. Now we're done with that chapter. Damn, that was a good chapter. He had us walk so far to get here. And I'm not going to say it wasn't enjoyable. We're going to finish this book tonight. I think we're going to finish this book tonight, guys. Maybe. It depends. I'm going to have to decide somewhere in chapter 8 cuz 9 and 10 are real short. No, we're going to finish this book tonight. God, the last 3 chapters have just... Good. Okay, chapter 8. Farewell to Lorien. That night the company was again summoned to the chamber of Celeborn, and there the lord and lady greeted them with fair words. At length Celeborn spoke of their departure. Now is the time, he said, when those who wish to continue the quest must harden their hearts to leave this land. Those who no longer wish to go forward may remain here for a while, but whether they stay or go, none can be sure of peace. For we are come now to the edge of doom. Here those who wish may await the oncoming of the hour till either the ways of the world lie open again, or we summon them to the last need of Lorien. Then they may return to their own lands, or else go to the long home of those that fall in battle. There was a silence. They all resolved to go forward, said Galadriel, looking in their eyes. As for me, said Boromir, my way home lies onward and not back. That is true, said Celeborn. But is all this company going with you to Minas Tirith? We have not decided our course, said Aragorn. Beyond Lothlorien, I do not know what Gandalf intended to do. Indeed, I did not think that even he had any clear purpose. Maybe not, said Celeborn. Yet when you leave this land, you can no longer forget the great river. As some of you know well, it cannot be crossed by travelers with baggage between Lorien and Gondor, save by boat. And there are not the bridges of Osgiliath broken down, and all the landings held now by the enemy. On which side will you journey? The way to Minas Tirith lies upon this side, upon the west. But the straight road of the quest lies east of the river, upon the darker shore. Which shore will you now take? If my advice is heeded, it will be the western shore, and the way to Minas Tirith, answered Boromir. But I am not the leader of the company. The others said nothing, and Aragorn looked doubtful and troubled. I see that you do not yet know what to do, said Celeborn. It is not my part to choose for you, but I will help you as I may. There are some among you who can handle boats, Legolas, whose folk know the swift forest river, and Boromir of Gondor, and Aragorn the traveller. And one hobbit, cried Merry. Not all of us look on boats as wild horses. My people live by the banks of the Brandywine. I freaking love Merry. He's one of my favorite of the hobbits. All 4 of them, honestly, are one of my favorite of the hobbits. And Bilbo, my most favorite of the hobbits. That is well, said Celeborn. Then I will furnish your company with boats. They must be small and light, for if you go far by water, there are places where you will be forced to carry them. You will come to the rapids of Sarn Gabir, and there, maybe at last, to the great falls of Rauros, where the river thunders down from Nen Hithoel. And there are other perils. Boats may make your journey less toilsome for a while, yet they will not give you counsel. In the end, you must leave them and the river, and turn west or east. Aragorn thanked Celeborn many times. The gift of boats comforted him much, not least because there would now be no need to decide his course for some days. The others, too, looked more hopeful. Whatever perils lay ahead, it seemed better to float down the broad tide of Anduin to meet them than plod forward with bent backs. Only Sam was doubtful. He, at any rate, still thought boats as bad as wild horses, or worse, and not all the dangers that he had survived made him think better of them. All shall be prepared for you, and await you at the haven before noon tomorrow, said Celeborn. I will send my people to you in the morning to help you make ready for the journey. Now we will wish you all a fair night and untroubled sleep. Good night, my friends, said Galadriel. Sleep in peace. Do not trouble your hearts overmuch with thought of the road tonight. Maybe the paths that you each shall tread are already laid before your feet, though you do not see them. Good night. The company now took their leave, and returned to their pavilion. Legolas went with them, for this was to be their last night in Lothlorien, and in spite of the words of Galadriel, they wished to take counsel together. For a long time they debated what they should do, and how it would be best to attempt the fulfilling of their purpose with the ring, but they came to no decision. It was plain that most of them desired to go first to Minas Tirith, and to escape, at least for a while, from the terror of the enemy. They would have been willing to follow a leader over the river and into the shadow of Mordor, but Frodo spoke no word, and Aragorn was still divided in his mind. His own plan, while Gandalf remained with them, had been to go with Boromir, and with his sword help to deliver Gondor, for he believed that the message of the dreams was a summons, and that the hour had come at last when the heir of Elendil should come forth and strive with Sauron for the mastery. But in Moria the burden of Gandalf had been laid before him, and he knew that he could not now forsake the ring, if Frodo refused in the end to go with Boromir. And yet, what help could he or any of the company give to Frodo, save to walk blindly with him into the darkness? "I shall go to Minas Tirith alone if need be, for it is my duty," said Boromir. And after that he was silent for a while, sitting with his eyes fixed on Frodo, as if he was trying to read the halfling's thoughts. At length he spoke again, softly, as if he was debating with himself. "If you wish only to destroy the ring," he said, "then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed might of the Dark Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away." He paused suddenly, as if he had become aware that he was speaking his thoughts aloud. "It would be folly to throw lives away, I mean," he ended. "Is a choice between defending my pages keep sticking together, a strong place, and walking openly into the arms of death. At least, that's how I see it." Frodo caught something new and strange in Boromir's glance, and he looked hard at him. Plainly, Boromir's thought was different from his final words. It would be folly to throw away what? The Ring of Power. He had said something like this at the council. See? Council. It's even named the Council of Elrond. But then he had accepted the correction of Elrond. Frodo looked at Aragorn, but he seemed deep in his own thought, and made no sign that he had heeded Boromir's words. And so their debate ended. Merry and Pippin were already asleep, and Sam was nodding. The night was growing old. In the morning, as they were beginning to pack their slender goods, elves that could speak their tongue came to them and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. The food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes, made of a meal that was baked a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. Gimli took up one of the cakes and looked at it with a doubtful eye. "Cram," he said under his breath, as he broke off a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed, and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. "No more, no more," cried the elves, laughing. "You have eaten enough already for a long day's march." "I thought it was only a kind of cram, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wild," said the dwarf. "So it is," they answered, "but we call it lembas, or whey bread, and it is more strengthening than any food made by men, and it is more pleasant than cram, by all accounts." "Indeed it is," said Gimli. "Why, it is better than the honey cakes of the Bearnings." "Give a net. Crawling on my desk. Go away. It's distracting." It's better than the honey cakes of the Bearnings, and that is great praise, for the Bearnings are the best bakers that I know of. But they are none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers in these days. You are kindly hosts." All the same, we bid you spare the food, they said. Eat a little at a time, and only at need, for these things are given to serve you when all else fails. The cakes will keep sweet for many, many days, if they are unbroken and left in their leaf wrappings, as we have brought them. One will keep a traveler on his feet for a day of long labor, even if he be one of the tall men of Minas Tirith. The elves next unwrapped and gave to each of the company the clothes they had brought. For each they had provided a hood and a cloak, made according to his size, of the light but warm silken stuff that the Galadrim wove. It was hard to say of what color they were. Gray, with the hue of twilight under the trees, they seemed to be, and yet if they were moved or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves, or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the stars. Each cloak was fastened about the neck with a brooch like green leaf veined with silver. "Are these magic cloaks?" asked Pippin, looking at them with wonder. "I do not know what you mean by that," answered the leader of the elves. "They are fair garments, and the web is good, for it was made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that is what you mean. Leaf and branch, water and stone, they have the hue and beauty of all these things under the twilight of Lorien that we love, for we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. Yet they are garments, not armor. They will not turn shaft or blade, but they should serve you well. They are light to wear, and warm enough or cool enough at need, and you will find them a great aid in keeping out of the sight of unfriendly eyes, whether you walk among the stones or the trees. You are indeed high in favor of the lady, for she herself and her maidens wove this stuff, and never before have we clad strangers in the garb of our own people." After their morning meal, the company said farewell to the lawn by the fountain. Their hearts were heavy, for it was a fair place, and it had become like home to them, though they could not count the days and nights that they had passed there. As they stood for a moment, looking at the white water in the sunlight, Haldir came walking towards them over the green grass of the glade. Ugh. Frodo greeted him with delight. "I have returned from the northern fences," said the elf, "and I am sent now to be your guide again. The Dimril Dale is full of vapor and clouds of smoke, and the mountains are troubled. There are noises in the deeps of the earth. If any of you had thought of returning northward to your homes, you would not have been able to pass that way. But come, your path now goes south." As they walked through Caras Galadon, the green ways were empty, but in the trees above them many voices were murmuring and singing. They themselves went silently. At last Haldir led them down the southward slopes of the hill, and they came again to the great green gate hung with lamps, and to the white bridge, and so they passed out and left the city of the elves. Then they turned away from the paved road and took a path that went off into a deep thicket of malorn trees, and passed on, winding through rolling woodlands of silver shadow, leading them ever down, southwards and eastwards, towards the shores of the river. They had gone some 10 miles, and noon was at hand, when they came on a high green wall. Passing through an opening, they came suddenly out of the trees. Before them lay a long lawn of shining grass, studded with golden Eleanor that glinted in the sun. The lawn ran out into a narrow tongue between bright margins. On the right and west, the Silverlode flowed glittering. On the left and the east, the great river rolled its broad waters, deep and dark. On the further shores, the woodlands still marched on southwards as far as the eye could see, but all the banks were bleak and bare. No Malorn lifted its golden-hung boughs beyond the land of Lorien. On the bank of the Silverlode, at some distance from the meeting of the streams, there was a height of white stones and white wood. By it were moored many boats and barges. Some were brightly painted, and shone with silver and gold and green, but most were either white or gray. 3 small gray boats had been made ready for the travelers, and in these the elves stowed their goods. And they also added coils of rope, 3 to each boat. Slender they looked, but strong, silken to the touch, gray of hue like the elven cloaks. "What are these?" asked Sam, handing one that lay upon the green sward. "Ropes indeed," answered an elf from the boats. "Never travel far without rope. And one that is long and strong and light, such are these. They may be a help in many needs." "You don't need to tell me that," said Sam. "I came without any, and I've been worried ever since. But I was wondering, what are these made of? Knowing a bit about rope making. It's in the family, as you might say." "They're made of hithlane," said the elf. "But there is no time now to instruct you in the art of their making. Had we known that this craft delighted you, we could have taught you much. But now, alas, you should at some time return hither. You must be content with our gift. Unless you should at some time return hither, you must be content with our gift. May it serve you well." "Come," said Haldir. "All is now ready for you. Enter the boats, but take care at first." "Heed the words," said the other elves. "These boats are light built, and they are crafty, and unlike the boats of other folk. They will not sink, lade them as you will, but they are wayward if mishandled. It would be wise if you accustomed yourselves to stepping in and out, here where there is a landing place, before you set off downstream." "That's such random good advice, I suppose." The company was arranged in this way. Aragorn, Frodo, and Sam were in one boat, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin in another, and in the third were Legolas and Gimli, who had now become fast friends. In this last boat most of the goods and packs were stowed. The boats were moved and steered with short-handled paddles that had broad, leaf-shaped blades. When all was ready, Aragorn led them on a trail up the Silverlode. The current was swift, and they went forward slowly. Sam sat in the bows, clutching the sides and looking back wistfully to the shore. The sunlight glittering on the water dazzled his eyes. As they passed beyond the green field of the Tongue, the trees drew down to the river's brink. Here and there, golden leaves tossed and floated in the rippling stream. The air was very bright and still, and there was a silence, except for the high, distant song of larks. Oh man, I have to sing again. They turned a sharp bend in the river, and there, sailing proudly down the stream towards them, they saw a swan of great size. The water rippled on either side of the white breast beneath its curving neck. Its beak shone like burnished gold, and its eyes glinted like jet set in yellow stones. Its huge white wings were half lifted. The music came down the river as it drew nearer, and suddenly they perceived that it was a ship, wrought and carved with elven skill in the likeness of a bird. 2 elves clad in white steered with black paddles. In the midst of the vessel sat Celeborn, and behind him stood Galadriel, tall and white. A circlet of golden flowers was in her hair, and in her hand she held a harp, and she sang. Sad and sweet was the sound of her voice in the cool, clear air. I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold there grew. Of wind I sang. A wind there came, and in the branches blew. Beyond the sun, beyond the moon, the foam was on the sea. And by the strand of Ilmarin there grew a golden tree. Beneath the stars of ever eve, in Eldamar it shone, in Eldamar beside the walls of elven Tirion. There long the golden leaves have grown upon the branching years, while here beyond the sundering seas now fall the elven tears. O Lorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day. The leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away. O Lorien, too long I have dwelt upon this hither shore, and in a fading crown have twined the golden Eleanor. But if of ships I should now sing, what ship would come to me? What ship would bear me ever back across so wide a sea? That was actually pretty good, not gonna lie. Aragorn stayed his boat as the swan ship drew alongside. The lady ended her song and greeted them. "We have come to bid you our last farewell," she said, "and to speed you with blessings from our land. Though you have been our guests," said Celeborn, "you have not yet eaten with us, and we bid you, therefore, a parting feast, here between the flowing waters that will bear you far from Lorien." The swan passed on slowly to the height, and they turned their boats and followed it. There, in the last end of Egladil, upon the green grass, the parting feast was held, but Frodo ate and drank little, heeding only the beauty of the lady and her voice. She seemed no longer perilous or terrible, nor filled with hidden power. Already she seemed to him, as by men of latter days elves still at times are seen, present and yet remote, a living vision of that which has already been left far behind by the flowing streams of time. After they had eaten and drunk, sitting upon the grass, Celeborn spoke to them again of their journey, and lifting his hand, he pointed south to the woods beyond the tongue. "As you go down the water," he said, "you will find that the trees will fail, and you will come to a barren country. There the river flows in stony vales mid high moors, until at last, after many leagues, it comes to the tall island of the Tindrock, that we call Tol Brandir. There it casts its arms about the steep shores of the isle, and falls then within the great noise and smoke over the cataracts of Rauros, down into the Nindalf, the Wetwang, as it is called in your tongue. That is a wide region of sluggish fen, where the stream becomes tortuous and much divided." Cool. There, the Entwash flows in by many mouths from the forest of Fangorn in the west. About that stream, on this side the great river, lies Rohan. On the further side are the bleak hills of the Emyn Muil. The wind blows from the east there, for they look out over the dead marshes and the no-man lands to Cirith Gorgor, and the black gates of Mordor. Boromir, and any that go with him seeking Minas Tirith, will do well to leave the great river above Rauros and cross the Entwash before it finds the marshes. Yet they should not go too far up that stream, nor risk becoming entangled in the forest of Fangorn. That is a strange land, and it is now little known, but Boromir and Aragorn doubtless do not need this warning. Also, interesting to have the elves of Lorien warn you about going into a strange forest. "Indeed, we have heard of Fangorn and Minas Tirith," said Boromir. "But what I have heard seems to me, for the most part, old wives' tales, such as we tell our children. All that lies north of Rohan is now to us so far away that fancy can wander freely there." Man, I can't wait until the cars have all left from the fair. Oh. "All that lies north of Rohan is now to us so far away that fancy can wander freely there. Of old Fangorn lay upon the borders of our realm, but it is now many lives of men since any of us have visited it, to prove or disprove the legends that have come down from distant years. I have myself been at whiles in Rohan, but I have never crossed it northwards. When I was sent out as a messenger, I passed through the gap by the skirts of the White Mountains, and crossed the Isen and the Grey Flood into Northerland. A long and wearisome journey, 400 leagues I reckoned it, and it took me many months, for I lost my horse at Tharbad, at the fording of the Grey Flood. After that journey, the road I have trodden with this company, I do not much doubt that I shall find a way through Rohan, and Fangorn too, if need be. Oh, Boromir. Then I need say no more, said Celeborn. But do not despise the lore that has come down from distant years, for oft it may chance that old wives keep in memory word of things that once were needful for the wise to know. Now Galadriel rose from the grass, and taking a cup from one of her maidens, she filled it with white mead and gave it to Celeborn. Now it is time to drink the cup of farewell, she said. Drink, Lord of Galadrim, and let not your heart be sad, though night must follow noon, and already our evening draweth nigh. Then she took the cup unto each of the company, and bade them drink and farewell. But when they had drunk, she commanded them to sit again upon the grass, and chairs were set for her and for Celeborn. Her maidens stood silent about her, and a while she looked upon her guests. At last she spoke again. We have drunk the cup of parting, she said, and the shadows fall between us. But before you go, I have brought in my ship gifts which the Lord and Lady of the Galadrim now offer you in memory of Lothlorien. Then she called to each in turn. Here is the gift of Celeborn and Galadriel to the leader of your company, she said to Aragorn. And she gave him a sheath that had been made to fit his sword. It was overlaid with a tracery of flowers and leaves wrought of silver and gold, and on it were set in elven runes formed of many gems the name Andúril and the lineage of the sword. The blade that is drawn from this sheath shall not be stained or broken, even in defeat, she said. But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again, unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning. Aragorn answered, Lady, you know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure that I seek. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would, and only through darkness shall I come to it. Yet maybe this will lighten your heart, said Galadriel, for it was left in my care to be given to you, should you pass through this land. Then she lifted from her lap a great stone of a clear green, set in a silver brooch that was wrought in the likeness of an eagle with outspread wings. And as she held it up, the gem flashed like the sun shining through the leaves of spring. This stone I gave to Celebrian, my daughter, and she to hers, and now it comes to you as a token of hope. In this hour, take the name that was foretold to you, Elisar, the elf stone of the house of Elendil. Then Aragorn took the stone and pinned the brooch upon his breast, and those who saw him wondered, for they had not marked before how tall and kingly he stood, and it seemed to them that many years of toil had fallen from his shoulders. For the gifts that you have given me, I thank you, he said, O Lady of Lorien, of whom we were sprung Celebrian and Arwen Evenstar. What praise could I say more? The lady bowed her head, and she turned then to Boromir, and to him she gave a belt of gold, and to Merry and Pippin she gave small silver belts, each with a clasp wrought like a golden flower. To Legolas she gave a bow, such as the Galadrim used, longer and stouter than the bows of Mirkwood, and strung with a string of elf hair. With it went a quiver of arrows. For you, little gardener and lover of trees, she said to Sam, I have only a small gift. She put into his hand a little box of plain grey wood, unadorned save for a single silver rune upon the lid. Here is set G for Galadriel, she said, but also it may stand for garden in your tongue. In this box there is earth from my orchard, and such blessing as Galadriel has still to bestow upon it. It will not keep you on your road, nor defend you against any spell, but if you keep it and see your home again at last, then perhaps it may reward you, though you should find all barren and laid waste, There will be few gardens in Middle-earth that will bloom like your garden, if you sprinkle this earth there. Then you may remember Galadriel, and catch a glimpse, far off, of Lorien, that you have seen only in our winter. For our spring and our summer are gone by, and they will never be seen on earth again, save in memory. Sam went red to the ears and muttered something inaudible as he clutched the box and bowed as well as he could. "And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves?" said Galadriel, turning to Gimli. "None, lady," answered Gimli. "It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of the Galadrim, and to have heard her gentle words. Hear, all ye elves," she cried to those about her. "Let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ungracious. Yet surely, Gimli, son of Glóin, you desire something that I could give. Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift." "There is nothing, Lady Galadriel," said Gimli, bowing low and stammering. "Nothing, unless it is permitted to ask, nay, to name a single strand of your hair which surpasses the gold of the earth, as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire." The elves stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder. But the lady smiled. "It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongues," she said. "Yet that is not true of Gimli, for none have ever made me a request so bold and yet so courteous. And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him speak? But tell me, what would you do with such a gift?" "Treasure it, lady," he answered, "in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if ever I return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in an imperishable crystal, to be an heirloom of my house, and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of the days." Then the lady unbraided one of her long tresses, and cut off 3 golden hairs, and laid them in Gimli's hand. "These words shall go with the gift," she said. "I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now in vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Glóin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion. And you, ring-bearer," she said, turning to Frodo, "I come to you last, who are not last in my thoughts. For you I have prepared this." She held up a small crystal vial. It glinted. Why do I keep saying glintered? That's the second time tonight. It glittered. Never mind. Glittered as she moved it, and rays of white light spread from her hand. "In this vial," she said, "is caught the light of Eärendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places, when all other lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror." Frodo took the vial, and for a moment it shone between them. He saw her again, standing like a queen, great and beautiful, but no longer terrible. He bowed, but found no words to say. Oh no. There's like a half a page worth of song, and it's in Elvish on the next page that I just noticed. Oh boy. That's gonna be interesting. Now the lady arose, and Celeborn led them back to the Hithe. A yellow noon lay upon the green land of the tongue, and the water glintered. That's... We gotta, hang on. Glintered. Nope. Wait. I don't think this is a word. I think this is... No. It's not a word. Oh, the water glittered with silver. All at last was made ready. The company took their places in the boats, as before. Crying farewell, the elves of Lorien, with long grey poles, thrust them out into the flowing stream, and the rippling waters bore them slowly away. The travellers sat still, without moving or speaking. On the green bank, near the very point of the tongue, the Lady Galadriel stood alone and silent. As they passed her, they turned, and their eyes watched her slowly floating away from them. For it seemed to them Lorien was slipping backward, like a bright ship masted with enchanted trees, sailing on to forgotten shores, while they sat helpless upon the margin of the grey and leafless world. Even as they gazed, the silver load passed out into the currents of the great river, and their boats turned and began to speed southwards. Soon the white form of the lady was small and distant. She shone like a window of glass upon a far hill in the westerning sun, or as a remote lake seemed seen from a mountain, a crystal fallen in the lap of the land. How many analogies are we going to do here? Then it seemed to Frodo that she lifted her arms in a final farewell, and far but piercing clear on the following wind came the sound of her voice singing. But now she sang in the ancient tongue of the elves beyond the sea. Oh, great, ancient Elvish. And he did not understand the words. Fair was the music, but it did not comfort him. Yet, as is the way of Elvish words, they remained graven in his memory, and long afterwards he interpreted them as well as he could. The language was that of elven song, and spoke of things little known on Middle-earth, and yet, I, Laurier Lantar Lassi Surinen, Yenny, I don't know how long I'm going to make it. Yenny, Uno Time, Ve Ramar, Alderon, Yenny Ve Linte, Yuldar Vanier, Mi Oro Mardi, Lise, Lise Miru Voreva, Andune, Pela Vardo, Telumar, Nu Luini, Yasin, Tintilar, E Eleni, Omario, Iratari, Lirinin, Si Maniulma, Nin, oh, that's a long word, En Quantuva, Ansi Tintale Varda, Oio Loseo, Vefanyar Mariat, Elentari, Ortane, Arilye Tier, Undulave Lumbule, Arsindanorilo, that's a long word, Kaita Mornier, E Falmarinar, Imbe Met, Arhise, Untupa. God, this is killing me. I'm almost there. I'm almost done. Kalar Kiryo, Miri Oayale, Sivanwa Na, Romelo Vanwa Valamar, Namarie, Nai Hiruvalie Valamar, Nai Elie Hiruva Namarie. Can we get a translation? Ah, like gold fall the leaves in the wind, long years numberless as the wings of trees. The long years have passed like swift draughts of the sweet mead in lofty halls beyond the west, beneath the blue vaults of Varda, wherein the stars tremble in the song of her voice, holy and queenly. Who now shall refill the cup for me? For now the kindler, Varda, the queen of the stars, from Mount Everwhite has lifted her hands like clouds, and all paths are drowned deep in shadow, and out of a grey country darkness lies on the foaming waves between us, and mist covers the jewels of Calakiria forever. Now lost, lost to those from the east is Valamar. Farewell, maybe thou shalt find Valamar. Maybe even thou shalt find it. Farewell. Varda is the name of that lady whom the elves in these lands of exile name Elbereth. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Welcome to the stream. Perfect timing, and by perfect I mean I can't believe you made me do that, Tolkien. Suddenly the river swept round a bend, and the banks rose upon either side, and the light of Lorien was hidden. Never did Frodo see that fair land again. Fuck you, John. God, he just keeps doing that. He did that the chapter before last too. We get it. Nobody ever sees it again. The travelers now turned their faces to the journey. The sun was before them, and their eyes were dazzled, for all were filled with tears. Gimli wept openly. I have looked the last upon that which was fairest, he said to Legolas his companion. Henceforward I will call nothing fair, unless it be her gift. He put his hand to his breast. Tell me, Legolas, why did I come on this quest? Little did I know where the chief peril lay. Truly, Elrond spoke, saying that we could not foresee what we might meet upon our road. Torment in the dark was the danger that I feared, and it did not hold me back. But I would not have come, had I known the danger of light and joy. Now I have taken my worst wound in this parting. Even if I were to go this night straight to the Dark Lord, alas for Gimli, son of Glóin. Nay, said Legolas, alas for us all, and for all that walk in the world in these after days. For such is the way of it, to find and lose, as it seems, to those whose boat is on the running stream. But I count you blessed, Gimli, son of Glóin. For your loss you suffer of your own free will, and you might have chosen otherwise, but you would have not forsaken your companions. And the least reward that you shall have is that the memory of Lothlorien shall remain forever clear and unstained in your heart, and shall neither fade nor grow stale. Maybe, said Gimli, and I thank you for your words. True words, doubtless, yet all such comfort is cold. Memory is not what the heart desires. That is only a mirror, be it clear as Keled Zaram, or so says the heart of Gimli the dwarf. Elves may see things otherwise. Indeed, I have heard that for them the memory is more like to the waking world than to a dream. Not so for dwarves. But let us talk no more of it. Look to the boat. She is too low in the water with all this baggage, and the great river is swift. I do not wish to drown my grief in cold water. He took up a paddle and steered towards the western bank, following Aragorn's boat ahead, which had already moved out of the middle stream. So the company went on their long way, down the wide hurrying waters, borne ever southwards. Bare woods stalked along either bank, and they could not see any glimpse of the lands beyond. The breeze died away, and the river flowed without a sound. No voice of bird broke the silence. The sun grew misty as the day grew old, until it gleamed in a pale sky like a high white pearl. Then it faded into the west, and dusk came early, followed by a gray and starless night. Far into the dark, quiet hours they floated on, guiding their boats under the overhanging shadows of the western woods. Great trees passed by like ghosts, thrusting their twisted, thirsty roots through the midst and down into the water. It was dreary and cold. It sounds dreary and cold. Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river, fretting among the tree roots and driftwood near the shore, until his head nodded and he fell into an uneasy sleep. Okay. This next page is 492, and the end is 527. And I've got about 40 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna do it. 30 pages. Yeah, 30 pages in 40 minutes. We can do that. We're gonna finish this book tonight. I'm out of things to drink, though. We'll see if my throat makes it. Oh, but yeah, that last paragraph, I was thinking, I'm sitting here imagining feeling cold, because I know this is still winter. The movies did not make it look like winter, at least not the winter I'm used to. Maybe that's winter in the UK. I don't know. Whew. Chapter 9. Second to last chapter. The Great River. Frodo was roused by Sam. He found that he was lying, well wrapped, under tall, gray-skinned trees in a quiet corner of the woodlands on the west bank of the great river, Anduin. He had slept the night away, and the gray of morning was dim among the bare branches. Gimli was busy with a small fire near at hand. They started again before the day was broad. Not that most of the company were eager to hurry southwards. They were content at that decision, which they must make at latest when they came to it. What? Huh? They were content that the decision, which they must make at latest when they came to Rauros, and the Tinderock Isle still lay some days ahead, and they let the river bear them on at its own pace, having no desire to hasten towards the perils that lay beyond, whichever course they took in the end. Aragorn let them drift with the stream as they wished, husbanding their strength against weariness to come. But he insisted at least that they should start early each day, and journey far into the evening, for he felt in his heart that time was passing, and he feared that the Dark Lord had not been idle where they lingered in Lorien. Nonetheless, they saw no sign of an enemy that day, nor the next day. The dull gray hours passed without event. As the third day of their voyage wore on, the lands changed slowly. The trees thinned and then failed altogether. On the eastern bank, to their left, they saw long, formless slopes stretching up and away towards the sky. Brown and withered they looked, as if fire had passed over them, leaving no living blade of green. An unfriendly waste, without even a broken tree or a bold stone to relieve the emptiness. They had come to the brown lands that lay vast and desolate between southern Mirkwood and the hills of the Emyn Muil. What pestilence or war or evil deed of the enemy had so blasted all that region, even Aragorn could not tell. Ah, South Dakota. I'm 100% joking. Good night, Michael. 11 is my bedtime. 11 is my bedtime, so I will do my best to make it before then, but if you have to head out, I hope you weren't super confused coming in the middle of me struggling through all of that silly Elvish. Upon the west, to their right, the land was treeless also. Oh, I was totally joking about South Dakota. I've driven through South Dakota. It is a beautiful place, but also it does kind of look like that. Like, it does when you're on a long, long highway. It does kind of look like that. Upon the west, to their right, the land was treeless also, but it was flat, and in many places green with wide plains of grass. On this side of the river they passed forests of great reeds, so tall that they shut out all view to the west, as the little boats went rustling by along their fluttering borders. Their dark withered plumes bent and tossed in the light cold airs, hissing softly and sadly. Here and there, through openings, Frodo could catch sudden glimpses of rolling meads. I don't know what that word means in this context. And far beyond them, hills in the sunset. and away on the edge of sight, a dark line, where marched the southernmost ranks of the misty mountains. There was no sign of living, moving things save birds. Of these there were many, small fowl whistling and piping in the reeds, but they were seldom seen. Once or twice the travelers heard the rush and whine of swan wings, and looking up they saw a great phalanx streaming along the sky. "Swans," said Sam, "and mighty big ones, too." "Yes," said Aragorn, "and they are black swans." "How wide and empty and mournful all this country looks," said Frodo. "Yeah, that's like I said, South Dakota." "I always imagined that as one journeyed south it got warmer and merrier until winter was left behind forever. We have not journeyed far south yet, as South Dakota is still quite far north. I promise I will stop talking shit about South Dakota. I have nothing against it at all. It's just kind of funny, because it does look like that. But we have not journeyed far south yet," answered Aragorn. "It is still winter, and we are far from the sea. Here the world is cold until the sudden spring, and we may yet have snow again. Far away, down in the Bay of Belfalas, to which Anduin runs, it is warm and merry, maybe, or would be but for the enemy. But here we are not above 60 leagues, I guess, south of the South Farthing, away in your shire. Hundreds of long miles yonder. You are looking now southwest across the north plains of the Rittermark, Rohan, the land of the horse lords. Ere long we shall come to the mouth of the Limlight that runs down from Fangorn to join the great river. That is the north boundary of Rohan, and of old all that lay between Limlight and the White Mountains belonged to the Rohirrim. It is a rich and pleasant land, and its grass has no rival. But in these evil days folk do not dwell by the river, or ride often its shores. Anduin is wide, yet the orcs can shoot their arrows far across the stream, and of late, it is said, they have dared to cross the water and raid the herds and studs of Rohan." Sam looked back from bank to bank uneasily. The trees had seemed hostile before, as if they had harbored secret eyes and lurking dangers. Now he wished that the trees were still there. He felt that the company was too naked, afloat in little open boats in the midst of shelterless lands, and on a river that was the frontier of war. In the next day or two, as they went on, borne steadily southwards, this feeling of insecurity grew on all the company. For a whole day they took to their paddles and hastened forward. The banks slid by. Soon the river broadened and grew more shallow. Long, stony beaches lay upon the east, and there were gravel shoals in the water, so that careful steering was needed. The brown lands rose into bleak wolds, over which flowed a chill air from the east. On the other side, the meads had become rolling downs of withered grass amidst a land of fen and tussock. Frodo shivered, thinking of the lawns and fountains, the clear sun and gentle rains of Lothlorien. There was little speech and no laughter in any of the boats. Each member of the company was busy with his own thoughts. The heart of Legolas was running under the stars of a summer night in some northern glade amid the beech woods. Gimli was fingering gold in his mind, and wondering if it were fit to be wrought into the housing of the lady's gift. Merry and Pippin, in the middle boat, were ill at ease, for Boromir sat muttering to himself, sometimes biting his nails, as if some restlessness or doubt consumed him, sometimes seizing a paddle and driving the boat close behind Aragorn's. Then Pippin, who sat in the bow, looking back, caught a queer gleam in his eye as he peered forward, gazing at Frodo. Sam had long ago made up his mind that, though the boats were maybe not as dangerous as he had been brought up to believe, they were far more uncomfortable than even he had imagined. He was cramped and miserable, having nothing to do but stare at the winterlands crawling by, and the gray water on either side of him. Even when the paddles were used were in use. They did not trust Sam with one. As dusk drew down on the fourth day, he was looking back over the bowed heads of Frodo and Aragorn and the following boats. He was drowsy and longed for camp and the feel of earth under his toes. Suddenly, something caught his sight. At first he stared at it listlessly. Then he sat up and rubbed his eyes. But when he looked again, he could not see it anymore. That night, just gonna leave that whole thought right there. That night, they camped on a small what? Okay. Wiktionary.org. What was that other word? The one I didn't know? Mead. An alcoholic drink. That's it. Etymology 1. Etymology 2. Meadow. A meadow. Okay, a meadow. That's what I was kind of wondering, maybe. Now, what's this one? EYOT. EYOT. From Middle English. Ite. From Old English. Stuff with G's in it. Ayat. A little island, especially in a river or lake. A synonym is an islet or an islet. How do you say that, actually? We're getting a bit distracted here, as I have a time limit. I must be distracted. Islet. Okay. I've been saying that word wrong my whole life. Okay. At night, they camped on a small eyot close to the western bank. Sam lay rolled in blankets beside Frodo. I had a funny dream an hour or two before we stopped, Mr. Frodo, he said. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. Funny it was, anyway. Well, what was it? Said Frodo, knowing that Sam would not settle down until he had told his tale, whatever it was. I haven't seen or thought of anything to make me smile since we left Lothlorien. It wasn't funny that way, Mr. Frodo. It was queer. All wrong, if it wasn't a dream. And you had best hear it. It was like this. I saw a log with eyes. The log's all right, said Frodo. There are many in the river, but leave out the eyes. That I won't, said Sam. 'Twas the eyes that made me sit up, so to speak. I saw what I took to be a log floating along in the half-light behind Gimli's boat. But I didn't give much heed to it. Then it seemed as if the log was slowly catching us up. And that was peculiar, as you might say, seeing as we were all floating on the stream together. Just then I saw the eyes, 2 pale sort of points, shiny-like, on a hump at the near end of the log. What's more, it wasn't a log, for it had paddle feet, like a swan's almost, only they seemed bigger, and they kept dipping in and out of the water. That's when I sat right up and rubbed my eyes, meaning to give a shout, if it was still there, but when I had rubbed the drowse out of my head, for the whatever it was coming along fast now, and getting close behind Gimli. But whether those 2 lamps spotted me moving... Oh, page stuck. Right? Yeah. Moving and staring. Or whether I came to my senses, I don't know. When I looked again, it wasn't there, yet I think I caught a glimpse, with the tail of my eye, as the saying is, of something dark shooting under the shadow of the bank. I couldn't see no more eyes, though. I said to myself, "Dreaming again, Sam Gamgee?" I said. And I said no more just then. But I've been thinking since, And now, I'm not so sure. What do you make of it, Mr. Frodo? They have been doing that to me. I don't know why. We have not had this problem before. I should make nothing of it but a log and the dusk and sleep in your eyes, Sam, said Frodo. If this was the first time that those eyes had been seen, but it isn't. I saw them away back north before we reached Lorien, and I saw a strange creature with eyes climbing to the flet that night. Haldir saw it too. And do you remember the report of the elves that went after the orc band? Ah, said Sam. I do, and I remember more too. I don't like my thoughts. But thinking of one thing and another, and Mr. Bilbo's stories and all, I fancy I could put a name on the creature, at a guess. A nasty name. Gollum, maybe. Yes, that is what I have feared for some time, said Frodo. Ever since the night on the Flet, I suppose he was lurking in Moria, and picked up our trail then. But I hoped that our stay in Lorien would throw him off the scent again. The miserable creature must have been hiding in the woods by the Silverlode, watching us start off. That's about it, said Sam. And we better be a bit more watchful ourselves, or we'll feel some nasty fingers round our necks one of these nights, if we ever wake up to feel anything. And that's what I was leading up to. No need to trouble Strider or the others tonight. I'll keep watch. I can sleep tomorrow, being no more than luggage in a boat, as you might say. I might, said Frodo. And I might say luggage with eyes. You shall watch, but only if you promise to wake me halfway towards morning, if nothing happens before then. Aw. In the dead hours, Frodo came out of a deep, dark sleep to find Sam shaking him. It's a shame to wake you, whispered Sam, but that's what you said. There's nothing to tell. Or not much. I thought I heard some soft plashing. Literally, it's just plashing. P-L-A-S-H, plashing. He's killing me. He's absolutely killing me with these words tonight. Plashing? Plashing? And a sniffing noise a while back. But you hear a lot of such queer sounds by a river at night. He lay down, and Frodo sat up, huddled in his blankets, and fought off his sleep. Minutes or hours passed slowly, and nothing happened. Oh, good job, though, making me sleepy myself. Oh my goodness. Frodo was just yielding to the temptation to lie down again when a dark shape, hardly visible, floated close to one of the moored boats. A long, whitish hand could be dimly seen as it shot out and grabbed the gunwale. Two pale, lamp-like eyes shone coldly as they peered inside, and then they lifted and gazed up at Frodo on the eyot. They were not more than a yard or two away, and Frodo heard the soft hiss of intaken breath. He stood up, drawing Sting from its sheath, and faced the eyes. Immediately their light was shut off. There was another hiss and a splash, and the dark log shape shot away downstream into the night. Aragorn stirred in his sleep, turned over, and sat up. "What is it?" he whispered, springing up and coming to Frodo. "I felt something in my sleep. Why have you drawn your sword?" "Gollum," answered Frodo. "Or at least, so I guess." "Ah," said Aragorn. "So you know about our little footpad, do you? He padded after us all through Moria, and right down to Nimrodel. Since we took to boats, he has been lying on a log and paddling with hands and feet. I've tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. I hoped the river voyage would beat him, but he is too clever a waterman. We shall have to try going faster tomorrow. You lie down now, and I will keep watch for what is left of the night. I wish I could lay my hands on the wretch. We might make him useful, but if I cannot, we shall have to try and lose him. He is very dangerous. Quite apart from murder by night on his own account, he may put any enemy that is about on our track." The night passed without Gollum showing so much as a shadow again. After that, the company kept a sharp lookout, but they saw no more of Gollum while the voyage lasted. If he was still following, he was very wary and cunning. At Aragorn's bidding, they paddled now for long spells, and the banks went swiftly by, but they saw little of the country, for they journeyed mostly by night and twilight, resting by day, and lying as hidden as the land allowed. In this way the time passed without event until the 7th day. The weather was still grey and overcast, with wind from the east, but as evening drew into night, the sky away westward cleared, and the pools of faint light, yellow and pale green, opened under the grey shores of cloud. There, the white rind of the new moon could be seen glimmering in the remote lakes. Sam looked at it and puckered his brows. The next day, the country on either side. Why? Why is that sentence there? Why is Sam puckering his brows? I don't get it. The next day, the country on either side began to change rapidly. The banks began to rise and grow stony. Soon they were passing through a hilly, rocky land, and on both shores there were steep slopes buried in brakes of thorn and sloe, tangled with brambles and creepers. Behind them stood low, crumbling cliffs and chimneys of grey, weathered stone dark with ivy, and beyond those again there rose high ridges crowned with wind-writhen firs. They were drawing near to the grey hill country of the Emyn Will, the southern march of the Wilderland. There were many birds about the cliffs and the rock chimneys, and all day, high in the air, flocks of birds had been circling, black against the pale sky. As they lay in their camp that day, Aragorn watched the flights doubtfully, wondering if Gollum had been doing some mischief, and the news of their voyage was now moving in the wilderness. Later, as the sun was setting, and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, he described a dark spot against the fading light, a great bird, high and far off, now wheeling, now flying on slowly southwards. "What is that, Legolas?" he asked, pointing to the northern sky. "Is it, as I think, an eagle?" "Yes," said Legolas. "It is an eagle, a hunting eagle. I wonder what that forebodes. It is far from the mountains." "We will not start again until it is fully dark," said Aragorn. The 8th night of their journey came. It was silent and windless. The grey east wind had passed away. The thin crescent of the moon had fallen early into the pale sunset, but the sky was clear above, and though far away in the south there were great ranges of clouds that still shone faintly, in the west stars glinted bright. "Come," said Aragorn, "we will venture one more journey by night. We are coming to the reaches of the river that I do not know well, for I have never journeyed by water in these parts before, not between here and the rapids of Sarngebir. But if I am right in my reckoning, those are still many miles ahead. Still, there are dangerous places even before we come there, rocks and stony eyets in the stream. We must keep sharp watch and try not to paddle swiftly." To Sam, in the leading boat, was given the task of watchman. He lay forward, peering into the gloom. The night grew dark, but the stars above were strangely bright, and there was a glimmer on the face of the river. It was close on midnight, and they had been drifting for some while, hardly using the paddles. Then suddenly Sam cried out. Only a few yards ahead, dark shapes loomed up in the stream, and he heard the swirl of racing water. There was a swift current which swung left, towards the eastern shore, where the channel was clear. As they were swept aside, the travelers could see, now very close, the pale foam of the river lashing against sharp rocks that were thrust out far into the stream like a ridge of teeth. The boats were all huddled together. "Hoy there, Aragorn!" shouted Boromir, as his boat bumped into the leader. "This is madness. We cannot dare the rapids by night, but no boat can live in Sarngebir, be it night or day. Back, turn if you can." He drove his paddle into the water, trying to hold the boat and bring it round. "I am out of my reckoning," he said to Frodo. "I did not know that we had come so far. Anduin flows faster than I thought. Sarngabir must be close at hand already. With great effort, they checked the boats and slowly brought them about, but at first they could make only a small headway against the current, and all the time they were carried nearer and nearer to the eastern bank. Now dark and ominous, it loomed up in the light. "All together, paddle," cried Boromir. "Paddle, or we shall be driven on the shoals." Even as he spoke, Frodo felt the keel beneath him grate on stone. At that moment there was a twang of bowstrings. Several arrows whistled over them, and some fell among them. One smote Frodo between the shoulders, and he lurched forward with a cry, letting his paddle go, but the arrow fell back, foiled by his hidden coat of mail. Another passed through Aragorn's hood. A third stood fast in the gunwale of the second boat, close by Merry's hand. Sam thought he could glimpse black figures running to and fro upon the long shingle banks that lay under the eastern shore. They seemed very near. "Ich," said Legolas, falling into his own tongue. "Orcs," cried Gimli. "Gollum's doing, I'll be bound," said Sam to Frodo. "And a nice place to choose, too. The river seems set on taking us right into their arms." They all leaned forward, straining at the paddles. Even Sam took a hand. Every moment they expected to feel the bite of black feathered arrows. Many whined overhead or struck the water nearby, but there were no more hits. It was dark, but not too dark for the night eyes of orcs, and in the star glimmer they must have offered their cunning foes some mark, unless it was that the grey cloaks of Lorien and the grey timber of the elf-wrought boats defeated the malice of the archers of Mordor. Stroke by stroke they labored on. In the darkness it was hard to be sure that they were indeed moving at all. But slowly the swirl of the water grew less, and the shadow of the eastern bank faded into night. At last, as far as they could judge, they had reached the middle of the stream again, and had driven their boats back some distance above the jutting rocks. Then, half turning, they thrust them with all their strength towards the western shore. Under the shadow of bushes, leaning out over the water, they halted and drew breath. Legolas laid down his paddle and took up the bow that he had brought from Lorien. Then he sprang ashore and climbed a few paces up the bank. Stringing the bow and fitting an arrow, he turned, peering back over the river into the darkness. Across the water there were shrill cries, but nothing could be seen. Frodo looked up at the elf standing tall above him as he gazed into the night, seeking a mark to shoot at. His head was dark, crowned with sharp white stars that glittered in the black pools of the sky beyond. But now rising and sailing up from the south, the great clouds advanced, sending out dark outriders into the starry fields. A sudden dread fell on the company. "Elbereth Gilthoniel," cried Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape, like a cloud, and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south, and spread towards the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, blacker than the pits in the night. Fierce voices rose up to greet it from across the water. Frodo felt a sudden chill running through him, and clutching at his heart, there was a deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound in his shoulder. "Oh God, I know how that feels." As I sit up straighter again. He crouched down as if to hide. Suddenly the great bow of Lorien sang. Shrill went the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him the winged shape swerved. There was a harsh, croaking scream, and it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore. The sky was clean again. There was a tumult of many voices far away, cursing and wailing in the darkness, and then silence. Neither shaft nor cry came again from the east that night. Huh. What the hell did Legolas just shoot? After a while, Aragorn led the boats back upstream. They felt their way along the water's edge for some distance, until they found a small, shallow bay. A few low trees grew there, close to the water. and behind them rose a steep rocky bank. Here the company decided to stay and wait until the dawn. It was useless to attempt to move further by night, and they made no camp and lit no fire, but lay huddled in the boats moored close together. "Praise be the bow of Galadriel, and the hand and eye of Legolas," said Gimli, as he munched a wafer of lembas. "That was a mighty shot in the dark, my friend." "But who can say what it hit?" said Legolas. "I cannot," said Gimli, "but I am glad that the shadow came no nearer. I liked it not at all. Too much it reminded me of the shadow in Moria, the shadow of the Balrog," he ended in a whisper. "It was not a Balrog," said Frodo, still shivering with the chill that had come upon him. "It was something colder. I think it was—" Then he paused and fell silent. "What do you think?" asked Boromir eagerly, leaning from his boat, as if he was trying to catch a glimpse of Frodo's face. "I think—" "No, I will not say," answered Frodo. "Whatever it was, its fall has dismayed our enemies." "So it seems," said Aragorn. "Yet where they are, and how many, and what they will do next, we do not know. This night we all must be sleepless. Dark hides us now, but what the day will show, who can tell? Have your weapons close to hand." Sam sat tapping the hilt of his sword as if he were counting on his fingers and looking up at the sky. "It's very strange," he murmured. "The moon's the same in the Shire and in Wilderland. Or it ought to be, but either it's out of its running, or I'm all wrong in my reckoning. You'll remember, Mr. Frodo, the moon was waning as we lay on the flat up in that tree, a week from the full, I reckon. And we'd been a week on the way last night, when up pops a new moon, as thin as a nail paring, as if we had never stayed no time in the Elvish country. Well, I can remember 3 nights there for certain, and I seem to remember several more, but I would take my oath that it was never a whole month. Anyone would think that time did not count in there." "And perhaps that was the way of it," said Frodo. "In that land, maybe, we were in a time that has elsewhere long gone by. It was not, I think, until Silverlode bore us back to Anduin that we returned to the time that flows through mortal lands to the great sea. And I don't remember any moon, either new or old, in Caras Galadon. Only stars by night and sun by day." Legolas stirred in his boat. "Nay, time does not tarry ever," he said. "But change and growth is not in all things and places alike. For the elves the world moves, and it moves both very swift and very slow. Swift because they themselves change little, and all else fleets by. It is a grief to them. Slow because they do not count the running years, not for themselves. The passing seasons are but ripples, ever repeated in the long, long stream. Yet beneath the sun all things must wear to an end at last." "But the wearing is slow in Lorien," said Frodo. "The power of the lady is on it. Rich are the hours, though short they seem in Caras Galadon, where Galadriel wields the elven ring." "That should not have been said outside Lorien, not even to me," said Aragorn. "Speak no more of it, but so it is, Sam. In that land you lost your count. There time flowed swiftly by us, as for the elves. The old moon passed, and a new moon waxed and waned in the world outside while we tarried there. And yestereve a new moon came again. Winter is nearly gone. Time flows on to a spring of little hope." The night passed silently. No voice or call was heard again across the water. The travelers huddled in their boats felt the changing of the weather. The air grew warm and very still under the great moist clouds that had floated up from the south and the distant seas. The rushing of the river over the rocks of the rapids seemed to grow louder and closer. The twigs of the trees above them began to drip. When the day came, the mood of the world about them had become soft and sad. Slowly the dawn grew to a pale light, diffused and shadowless. There was mist on the river, and white fog swathed the shore. The far bank could not be seen. "I can't abide fog," said Sam, "but this seems to be a lucky one. Now perhaps we can get away without those cursed goblins seeing us." "Perhaps so," said Aragorn, "but it will be hard to find the path unless the fog has lifted a little later on, and we must find the path if we are to pass Sarngabir and come to the Emyn Muil." "I do not see why we should pass the rapids or follow the river any further," said Boromir. "If the Emyn Muil lie before us, then we can abandon these cockle boats and strike westward and southward until we come to the Entwash and cross into my own land." "We can, if we are making for Minas Tirith," said Aragorn. "But that is not yet agreed, and such a course may be more perilous than it sounds. The Vale of Entwash is flat and fenny, and fog is a deadly peril there for those on foot and laden. I would not abandon our boats until we must. The river is at least a path that cannot be missed." "But the enemy holds the eastern bank," objected Boromir. "And even if you pass the gates of Argonath and come unmolested to the Tindrock, what will you do then? Leap down the falls and land in the marshes?" "No," answered Aragorn. "Say rather that we will bear our boats by the ancient way to Rauros Foot, and there take to the water again. Do you not know, Boromir, or do you choose to forget the North Stair and the high seat upon Amon Hen that were made in the days of the great kings? I at least have a mind to stand in that high place again, before I decide my further course. There, maybe, we shall see some sign that will guide us." Boromir held out long against this choice, but when it became plain that Frodo would follow Aragorn, whither he went, he gave in. "It is not the way of men of Minas Tirith to desert their friends at need," he said, "and you will need my strength, if ever you are to reach the Tindrock. To the Tall Isle I will go, but no further. There I shall turn to my home, alone if my help has not earned the reward of any companionship." The day was now growing, and the fog had lifted a little. It was decided that Aragorn and Legolas should at once go forward along the shore, while the others remained by boats. Aragorn hoped to find some way which they could carry both their boats and their baggage to the smoother water beyond the rapids. "Boats of the elves would not sink, maybe," he said, "but that does not say that we should come through Sarngabir alive. None have ever done it yet. No road was made by the men of Gondor in this region, for even in their great days their realm did not reach up Anduin beyond the Emyn Muil. But there is a portage way somewhere on the western shore, if I can find it. It cannot yet have perished, for light boats used to journey out of Wilderland down to Osgiliath, and still did so, until a few years ago, when the orcs of Mordor began to multiply. Seldom in my life has any boat come out of the north, and the orcs prowl on the east shore," said Boromir. "If you go forward, peril will grow with every mile, even if you find a path." "Peril lies ahead on every southward road," answered Aragorn. "Wait for us one day. If we do not return in a time, you will know that evil has indeed befallen us. Then you must take a new leader, and follow him as best you can." It was with a heavy heart that Frodo saw Aragorn and Legolas climb the steep bank and vanish into the mists, but his fears proved groundless. Only 2 or 3 hours had passed, and it was barely midday when the shadowy shapes of the explorers appeared again. "All is well," said Aragorn as he clambered down the bank. "There is a track, and it leads to a good landing that is still serviceable. The distance is not great. The head of the rapids is but half a mile below us, and they are little more than a mile long. Not far beyond them, the stream becomes clear and smooth again, though it runs swiftly. Our hardest task will be to get our boats and baggage to the old portageway. We have found it, but it lies well back from the waterside." Ooh. I'm starting to get tired. Oh, look. It's 11:59. We may not finish this book tonight, fam. We may not make it. I don't think my voice is going to make it. It lies well back from the waterside here, and runs under the lee of a rock wall, a furlong or more from the shore. We did not find where the northward landing lies, if it still remains. We must have passed it yesterday night. We might labor far upstream and yet miss it in the fog. I fear we must leave the river now, and make for the portageway as best we can from here. That would not be easy, even if we were all men, said Boromir. Yet, such as we are, we will try it, said Aragorn. Aye, we will, said Gimli. The legs of men will lag on a rough ground, while a dwarf goes on. Be the burden twice his own weight, Master Boromir. Okay. How many more pages we got? Man. Rip voice. It's true. Rip voice, rip eyes. I'm gonna have the tired hit me like a freaking hammer. Ooh. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do 2 more pages. We'll finish out chapter 9. And I'll figure out what we're doing next time. We might just do chapter 10 and then start straight into book 2. The Two Towers. We're already in book 2. Because that's how they decided to publish this one. The task proved hard indeed, yet in the end it was done. The goods were taken out of the boats and brought to the top of the bank, where there was a level space. Then the boats were drawn out of the water and carried up. They were far less heavy than any had expected. Of what tree growing in the elvish country they were made, not even Legolas knew. But the wood was tough, and yet strangely light. Merry and Pippin alone could carry their boat with ease along the flat. Nonetheless, it needed the strength of the 2 men to lift and haul them over the ground that the company now had to cross. It sloped up away from the river, a tumbled waste of gray limestone boulders, with many hidden holes shrouded with weeds and bushes. There were thickets of brambles and sheer dells, and here and there boggy pools fed by waters trickling from the terraces further inland. That was 1 sentence. 2 semicolons. One by one, Boromir and Aragorn carried the boats, and while the others toiled and scrambled after them with the baggage, at last all was removed and laid on the portageway. Then, with little further hindrance, save from sprawling briars and many fallen stones — that sounds like a lot of hindrance, not gonna lie — they moved forward all together. Fog still hung in veils upon the crumbling rock wall, and to their left mist shrouded the river. They could hear it rushing and foaming over the sharp shelves and stony teeth of Sarn Gabir, but they could not see it. Twice they made the journey, before all was brought safe to the southern landing. There the portageway, turning back to the waterside, ran gently down to the shallow edge of the little pool. It seemed to have been scooped in the riverside, not by hand, but by the water swirling down from Sarn Gabir, against a low pier of rock that jutted out some way into the stream. Beyond it the shore rose sheer in a gray cliff, and there was no further passage for those on foot. Already the short afternoon was past, and a dim, cloudy dusk was closing in. They sat beside the water, listening to the confused rush and roar of the rapids hidden in the mist. They were tired and sleepy, and their hearts were as gloomy as the dying day. "Well, here we are, and here we must pass another night," said Boromir. "We need sleep, and even if Aragorn had a mind to pass the gates of Argonath by night, we're all too tired, except, no doubt, our sturdy dwarf." Gimli made no reply. He was nodding as he sat. "Let us rest as much as we can now," said Aragorn. "Tomorrow we must journey by day again, unless the weather changes once more and cheats us. We shall have a good chance of slipping through, unseen by any eyes upon the eastern shore. But tonight 2 must watch together in turns, 3 hours off and on. 3 hours off and 1 on guard. I see." Nothing happened that night, worse than a brief drizzle of rain an hour before dawn. As soon as it was fully light, they started. Already the fog was thinning. They kept as close as they could to the western side. And they could see the dim shapes of the low cliffs rising ever higher. Shadowy walls with their feet in the hurrying river. In the mid-morning, the clouds drew down lower, and it began to rain heavily. They drew the skin covers over their boats to prevent them from being flooded, and drifted on. Little could be seen before them or about them through the gray, falling curtains. The rain, however, did not last long. Slowly, the sky above grew lighter, and then suddenly the clouds broke, and their draggled fringes trailed away northward. So many weird words in these chapters. Up the river. The fogs and mists were gone. Before the travelers lay a wide ravine, with great rocky sides to which clung, upon shelves and in narrow crevices, a few thorn trees. The channel grew nearer, and the river swifter. Now they were speeding along with little hope of stopping or turning, whatever they might meet ahead. Over them was a lane of pale blue sky, around them the dark, overshadowed river, and before them, black, shutting out the sun, the hills of Emmenwil, in which no opening could be seen. Frodo, peering forward, saw in the distance 2 great rocks approaching. Like great pinnacles or pillars of stone they seemed. Tall and sheer and ominous, they stood upon either side of the stream. A narrow gap appeared between them, and the river swept the boats toward it. "Behold the Argonath, the pillars of the kings," cried Aragorn. "We shall pass them soon. Keep the boats in line, and as far apart as you can. Hold the middle of the stream." As Frodo was borne towards them, the great pillars rose like towers to meet him. Giants they seemed to him. Vast grey figures, silent but threatening. Then he saw that they were indeed shaped and fashioned. The craft and power of old had wrought upon them, and still they preserved, through the suns and rains of forgotten years, the mighty likenesses in which they had been hewn. Upon great pedestals founded in the deep waters stood 2 great kings of stone. Still with blurred eyes and crannied brows, they frowned upon the north. The left hand of each was raised palm outward in gesture of warning. In each right hand there was an axe. Upon each head there was a crumbling helm and a crown. Great power and majesty they still wore, the silent wardens of a long-vanished kingdom. Awe and fear fell upon Frodo, and he cowered down, shutting his eyes and not daring to look up as the boat drew nearer. Even Boromir bowed his head as the boats whirled by, frail and fleeting as little leaves under the enduring shadow of the sentinels of Númenor. So they passed into the dark chasm of the gates. Sheer rose the dreadful cliffs to unguessed heights on either side. Far off was the dim sky. The black waters roared and echoed, and a wind screamed over them. Frodo, crouching over his knees, heard Sam in front muttering and groaning. "What a place, what a horrible place. Just get me out of this boat and I'll never wet my toes in a puddle again, let alone a river." "Fear not," said a strange voice behind him. Frodo turned and saw Strider, and yet not Strider, for the weather-worn ranger was no longer there. In the stern sat Aragorn, son of Arathorn, proud and direct, guiding the boat with skillful strokes. His hood was cast back, and his dark hair was blowing in the wind. A light was in his eyes, a king returning from exile to his own land. "Fear not," he said. "Long have I desired to look upon the likenesses of Isildur and Anarion, my sires of old. Under their shadow, Elisar, the elf-stone son of Arathorn, of the house of Valandil, Isildur's son, heir of Elendil, has naught to dread." Then the light of his eyes faded, and he spoke to himself. "Would that Gandalf were here. How my heart yearns for Minas Arnor and the walls of my own city. but whither shall I go? The chasm was long and dark, and filled with the noise of wind and rushing water and echoing stone. It bent somewhat towards the west, so that at first all was dark ahead, but soon Frodo saw a tall gap of light before him, ever growing. Swiftly it drew nearer, and suddenly the boats shot through, out into a wide, clear light. The sun, already long fallen from the noon, was shining in a windy sky. The pent waters spread out into a long oval lake, pale Nen Hithwel, fenced by steep gray hills whose sides were clad with trees, but their heads were bare, cold gleaming in the sunlight. At the far southern end rose 3 peaks. The midmost stood somewhat forward from the others, and sundered from them, an island in the waters, about which the flowing river flung pale, shimmering arms. Distant but deep, there came up on the wind a roaring sound like a roll of thunder heard far away. "Behold, Tol Brandir," said Aragorn, pointing south to the tall peak. "Upon the left stands Amon Law, and upon the right is Amon Hen, the hills of hearing and of sight. In the days of the great kings, there were high seats upon them, and watch was kept there, but it is said that no foot of man or beast has ever been set upon Tol Brandir. Ere the shade of night falls, we shall come to them. I hear the endless voice of Rauros calling." The company rested now for a while, drifting south on the current that flowed through the middle of the lake. They ate some food, and then they took to their paddles and hastened on their way. The sides of the westward hills fell into shadow, and the sun grew round and red. Here and there a misty star peered out. The 3 peaks loomed before them, darkling in the twilight. Rauros was roaring with a great voice. Already night was laid on the flowing waters when the travelers came at last under the shadow of the hills. The 10th day of their journey was over. Woderland was behind them. They could go no further without choice between the east way and the west. The last stage of the quest was before them. And although we have 27 pages left in the book, I am going to call it for tonight because 11 o'clock is my bedtime. So we'll pick it up with the breaking of the fellowship and probably chapter 1 of the 2 Towers next time. Hopefully you can still hear me because I rip my voice. Those were sure some chapters though. Yeah. I'm going to go roll into bed. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.